Hey everybody, welcome to my garage. It's OK Fixer. We're going to put connecting rods on this crankshaft. ODB still has my connecting rods and I probably won't see them for several months. So I bought a new set. I bought a set of MP forged rods, and we're going to weigh them and we're going to orient them on the crankshaft. This crankshaft right here, I have it marked since this is the clutch side and that's the rear side. This would be the front, that would be the rear. Number 3 is going to be this throw. Number 1 is going to be this throw. Number 4 is going to be this throw, connecting rod going that way. And number 2 going that way. And you have to orient yourself to exactly how they fit in the case. The firing order on this is 1432. So, you know, I'm trying to get across what I want to say to you. Firing order isn't dependent on a distributor. It's dependent on a crank. And you have to orient things in a Volkswagen engine. Whereas a General Motors engine, the firing order being 1843657, you bolt a crank in place and it doesn't matter, because you just go right down the line and, you know, throw a piston in the hole and you know, put a cap on the rod, you know, and a bearing. Whereas this, you have to orient everything where they're correct. On the Volkswagen rods, they have a marking, a forge marking, but these do not have forge markings. On a Volkswagen rod, they will have a forge right there, forge mark, but these do not. So what the instructions say is the tang that holds the bearing in place goes down and the numbers matching, this one says 816, the cap says 816, will be matching. So this will be like so, be like so, be like so, and be like so. And that way all the numbers will be up when you have this in the case and the rods are poking out of the case. The numbers will be up. You will not be able to see the forge marks on these because there is no forge mark. The Volkswagen engine, you'd be able to see the forge mark. I want to weigh each one of these just for giggles to see what they are. So I'm going to zero this out and see what we got, and we'll weigh each one of them. That says 5.1 ounces. And I'm just, not that I can do anything about it, I'm just curious, because reciprocating mass should be close. Pistons, rods, and such should be close. See, that's 5.3 ounces. That's a big difference. Now it says 5.7. Now it says 5.6. I think there's a big difference in my dope scale. Might be because it's not on a hard surface. Let's put it on a hard surface and see what happens. And we will zero. It says 1.31 pound, 3.9 ounces. That's a little better. £1 pound, 3.9 ounces. 1 pound, 3.9 ounces. One pound, 3.9 ounces. They all weigh the same. So that's good. Scaring me there for a minute. Like I said, reciprocating mass is important. They should be equal. That way it doesn't vibrate as much. It's a nice, pleasant, smooth pulses that match the other pulses. Alright, let's take one of these rods off and we'll put a bearing in it, and I'll put it on the crankshaft, and then tighten it up, and I'll show you what we're looking for. Put these back in the box. It doesn't matter which are which because they're all new rods. So, be back. The bolts holding the rod caps on were put in with 300 foot-pounds of torque. So I had to put it in my vise, but you want to take and put a block of wood on either side before you start giving her the beans. Also, a block of wood is a good thing to have. To knock this apart. So we'll take a clean paper towel, give it a little wipe, set it down next to the bearing, and give that a little wipe. The little tang goes in the little tang. These are just standard rods. They don't have, I'm sure you can buy all kinds of different journals and whatnot. These are just standard journals. You can use plastic gauge if you want to. But if they're not correct, what are you going to do? Well, the answer, of course, is, well, you're not going to put it together. This is fastener assembly lube, so I'm going to put some of this on here, and I'm going to use it as a tool. And what this is going to do is this is going to keep it from binding while we tighten it up. And I'm going to put the smallest amount around that dowel. And I'm going to put some around the crown here also. And that way when you're putting the beans to her, she turns. Without galling or sticking. Now we're going to put a little lube on the journal. Put a little on the bearing, get the cat hair off there. Numbers up and tangs down. There's the tang, there's the number. Now, I would consider that too tight. So, you know, I'm going to assemble this. Do you see that? That's too tight. You're going to have to study this some more, because I used to, you want it so they just drop. You want it so they just, when you let go of it, it just falls. And this does not fall. See, that's what I'm thinking about these aftermarket parts. See, you're second guessing shit now. Alright, well, we're going to have to take a look at this, and we'll have to examine everything, and I'll have to do some studying on this, because in my opinion, that's, yeah, it moves. I think the bearing's fine. It's just that I think it's the sides. I think that's too tight. I think that's wrong. Let me look. Maybe I'm just used to a notoriously sloppy engine. But it used to be where you would bring it up like this, and then you put it like this, and it would drop down. And it does, but it's got just a little bit more clearance in it than I would think. It's not binding. I think it'll be okay. I think it's just very close. Tolerances are just very close. And so when it first starts, we'll just rev her right to the moon, right? I'll do a little bit more investigating, but I took that off and looked at it, and I think it'll be okay. It's just that there, yes. I used to we used to put these on, and you could feel them if they had enough clearance, and it does. And you used to be able to just drop it and let it go, and it would be very slowly move down. I think that'll be okay. All right, let's put the other three on, and we'll see where we're at. Well, I took them apart and put it back together, and took it apart and put it back together, and took it apart and put it back together, and put one on one place and one on the other, and tried one on the other place and one on another place, and I kind of got a response out of doing that, and the response I got was kind of a good response. Maybe just because of they were just machined, and the caps wanted me to run. I run the screws in and out of the caps 3 or 4 times, and used lots of that grease. And so what I've got on them right now is 15. And I'll have to read because they're a little bit different than the factory ones. Let me read the instructions in a second. But I did a little studying, and they're all supposed to be, they're supposed to drop like that. So, come on. It's just slightly, see that? But I think that's just, that'll come out of there first couple of times it spins around, probably. But if I get a little bit more torque on it, maybe it will cinch down that cap a little straighter, maybe. Okay, let's look at our positions. And our position on number 3 is we have the numbers up. And position on number 1, we have the numbers up. Position on number 4, number up. Position on number 2, number up. And you all have to look. You have to look at all this stuff. Now, also, oh, I already told you about that. So I think we're not too bad there. Let's read our instructions and put a little bit more torque on them. This is 26. These bolts are 12.7/16, so they're not metric. So you gotta have a 7/16 12 point. So I had to check those. I had to break out my old sockets. I don't have very many complete tools, complete sets of sockets, but these are kind of dear to me. There you go. Now, that's what's supposed to happen. So what I did is I took them apart. I put the cap in a clamp, zipped them bolts in and out, so they were probably had some flashing on them or something that made them just slightly. And one that was tight, I changed it to a one that was normal, and it become normal, and so I didn't see it being turned different, so that's how I fixed that. And that's the results you should have. Okay, let's have a look at our, because you can't look at them enough. Number 3, okay, got our numbers up. Number 1, got our numbers up. Number 4, have our numbers up. And number 2, we have our numbers up. All numbers match. Okay. Look over things 2, 3, 6, 8, 10 times, because this is deep in your engine, and you don't want to take it up, take it apart again for about 100,000 miles. So if you have something is you know, that's not binding, not binding, not binding, they should last for a good long time. So that's what we're after. It's very important. I can't tell you how important that is. Let me show you something. My mother bought them for me when I was 15, and I still have them. Part number 8340, and then it says 8340, and it says 38 foot-pounds. Okay, so it says 38 pounds torque to 30, and then finish at 38. So I have them set to 24 like the book. So I'm going to need to bring them up to 30 and then 38. So that's a lot for a connecting rod, in my opinion, but I'm going to do it like they say. So let me do that really quick. And we'll see how they move. Be right back. Brilliant. Alright, that's what your connecting rod should look like. They should fall like that. Boy, that's perfect. That's beautiful. Now, if they don't, and you know you've got the right parts, don't freak out like I did. Take it back apart. Take your caps, put them in a vise between wood, and run the caps in and out with some lubricant, and then when you put them together, make sure you use your fastener assembly lube, because you're putting a lot more torque on it, so you don't want binding here, binding in the threads. So this worked out pretty well for me. I did freak out a little bit, and I thought I was going to get a Chinese screw job, but this seems to look very nice. Looks very nice indeed. Okay, let's prepare our case. We have our crank built. Let's prepare our case, and we'll put our crank in our case. Okay, here's our case. We're going to give it a little blowout. We're going to do both halves, and then I'm going to clean this edge up with a little bit of brake clean, the sealing edge. Now, I've washed this and sprayed it with a power washer, washed it all out with gasoline, sprayed it with a power washer, dried it all out, and still the stains won't go away. So, you know, it is what it is inside. It's clean, it's just stained. So let's prepare our cases that way. Okay, when you're cleaning your case, make sure all your dowel pins are there. There's 4 on this side, and there's 1 on the other. So there's 5 all told. If you took it to a power car wash, you probably blew them all out, so go look for them. In your gasket kit, there'll be 6 little O-rings like this. A little oil on them. And then send them home. Just like that. Alright, look down your lifter holes and see if they're all wallered out. If they're all wallered out, you're going to need to have them resized, if they can do that. I don't even know if they can do that. Probably you're going to need another case. Then you're going to look at your lifters and make sure there's not a lot of crud on them. Make sure the hole's not plugged up. Put a little assembly lube on them and send them home. I did not look or make any references to which ones went where. So if you want to, that's fine. If you don't want to, that's fine. Your lifters should move in and out easily without a lot of trouble like this one's given me. And if you got a tight one, switch it into another hole. See what happens. Pushing them all the way in like that, they haven't been in that position in a long time. put lifters in the other half of the case, and we'll use our clips to hold it in place, so when you put it on top of there, the lifters don't fall all into your engine. So let's do that. Hands are all greasy. Let me shut this off real quick. Next, we're going to put our camshaft bearings in. And they only go one way. There's only one way they can go. Can't go any other way. So, does this one go in here? No. Or does it? Can't remember. I don't think it matters. Okay, the thin one, or the skinny one, I should say, goes to the back. Like that. Okay, and we're going to put the other ones in the other half of the case. This here, having a tang on it, on the other half of the case, will keep this one from spinning. If you have a high lift cam, and if you're running the bevel cut gears, there's a lot of thrust on that, and that's the bearing surface for the thrust, because the gears aren't cut straight, they're cut at a, so it's going to push on the cam, and it's going to run that bearing surface right there. On a performance engine, it'll have two of these. It'll have two thrust bearings, because half is good, all the way around is much more, because you have so much more tension on the valve train. This one's just getting a factory cam, and it's not a lot of lift, so half of a thrust is good. Incidentally, if you're putting a new camshaft in this, buy new lifters as well. I don't care, because I'm running the old camshaft, so it doesn't matter to me. If it was a hydraulic engine, it would be different. I would buy new lifters and a cam, but I can take up all that, any wear clearance with adjusting, provided the lobes aren't completely gone on the camshaft, if that makes sense. Your lifters shouldn't have any pits or spalling, that kind of stuff, or Captain Obvious stuff wrong with it. So let's put the other halves in the other case, and then I think we'll be ready to put the crankshaft in. Oh, we have to put bearings in the case too for the crankshaft. We'll put this one on the end of the crankshaft, as well as the other half in the other portion of the case. Have we forgotten anything? Okay, we got this bearing in, it's oiled. We have all our dowel pins in. Our rubbers are on. We've put this bearing on the front bearing, okay? Picking it up by 1 and 2, leaving 3 and 4. Whoops, sorry about that. We can gingerly lay our crankshaft down, get the cat hair out of there, and we'll adjust our oil slinger, and we'll put that halfway, that's about right. And this is going to have to go about halfway. And that's going to be about right. And then this one is way off. Come on out of there. Oops. Give that a spin. Sorry if my big head gets in the way. Don't mean it to. And then we're not going to pound or hammer or provoke this in any way that's going to damage anything. We're going to do it gingerly and gently. Okay. Let me beat on this a little bit. Just joking. But let me massage this a little bit and get it to lay down in there. Okay. I don't know if I've got my crankshaft in there. I felt it kind of clunk in there, but I'm not certain that it's in there. Okay. Take the other bearing, the other piece, out of the other case and put a little grease on it. And put it on that main right in the center, and if it's down far enough, it won't rock any. It'll rock just a tick, but it won't rock like you know, 1/8 of an inch. There's going to be a little crush there. There's going to be a little crush when it goes in there, so it's not there's maybe 1/1000th of an inch right there, back and forth. So I'm relatively certain that I have my crankshaft, because this isn't walking back and forth all the way down. Also, my marks that I put all line up. My little scribe marks and such, they all line up also. So we should be good. Remember when we scribed these bearings when we fit them to the block originally. Okay, so we should be good. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our camshaft in and time it. Camshaft is next. If you look at the back of this camshaft, right there, it says +1, +1. Okay, I'm going to tell you about +1 here in a minute. In the front, there's a mark right here. On the cam gear, on the crank gear, there's 2 marks. So, what you need to do is you're going to need to put this in those 2 marks. Right there. Let's see if I've got this straight. Put my flashlight so I can see. Yes, sir. And it's very important we get both of those marks and that mark right in the center. Those are your timing marks. Train. Okay. And then we're going to settle that cam right down there, right there. Okay. Now, the worker at the factory had 10 camshafts sitting in front of him. That's 10. T-E-N. 10 of them. Okay? Now, they were marked +5 all the way down to -5. Okay? And he would fit a cam depending on whether or not the camshaft would hop out of the journal. Okay, so with everything being clean, and we can rotate this, when we go forward like this, everything's fine. Now, when we back up, the camshaft, oh, you're in the wrong place. Sorry. Sorry about that. Now, when we go forward, see that? That's fine. Now, when we back up and this gear is pushing this, the cam should not hop out. And indeed, it does not. Okay? And what that is these gears are hobbed. Okay? And that means they're cut a certain way. And I'm not an expert. I just know that that's what they did. It has to do with how the gear is cut. It's called hobbing. Okay, so they put the crankshaft in there and they fit a camshaft to this block because the block might be different, okay, and the gear might be different, okay, and he would put one in there and the camshaft would hop out. Okay, let's go a different way. He put a 3 in there and it'd hop out. Okay, let's put a 2 in there, still hop out. Let's put a 1 in there. Nope, it won't hop out. That's your cam. See, and he had 10 of them in front of him. We do not have that gloriousness, for a lack of words. We don't have that that wonderful thing that they had. So we have to make do with what we have. Now, using the original case, it's a German case, so it's not, the measurements are right, okay? Using a German case, the cam journals and the crank journals are going to be correct. And this cam gear and this crank gear and this cam came out of the same engine. So I know it's not going to give me any trouble. Now, I've got a bad camshaft in my engine, okay, and it's an original engine. I need a camshaft. I suggest you look for, just do an advertisement on the Samba. I need a +3 cam. I need a -3 cam. Somebody will have one. Somebody's got stacks and stacks and stacks of them because the camshafts last forever. You know, on the factory engines, they don't run a lot of horsepower and stuff. Now, I don't know how they do it. I do not know how they do it on the fancy engines, on the race engines, without making noise. See, this is all part of that. This is all part of that burning the candle at both ends thing that I keep preaching about, and putting all these high performance parts in your car and not knowing, you know, if they're going to be as good as the German ones. You know, I don't know. And the new ones now, they have straight cut gears, so maybe a hobbing has to do with helical cut gears. I'm not a machinist, so I don't know. If anybody knows, you can comment. But I know that this gear here was matched at the factory to this gear for this case. So we have those three things going together. I know this cam and this crank gear are not going to make noise unless they're just wore all out, unless they're all pitted and woofused all up, and they are not. So, okay, I'm going to spin this over again and double check my timing, make sure it's correct, okay? And then what's next is a final look at everything, a final look at the other half of the case. We need to put the bottle cap in, and then we're going to coat our case with some glue and glue it together. Now, a lot of guys, they put their distributor drive in, and I don't want to do that. And I'll tell you why I don't want to do that. It's because I've got it like this, and it'll come out, and yeah, I'm going to put that in later. So don't chide me for that. It's just the way I do it. It's just the way I do it. And you can find the timing easily by the crankshaft gear or the crankshaft pulley, and you'll be able to look through the case and see where these lobes are at. So if they're pointing towards 3 over here, if they're towards 3 and you're up, you're on number 1 because it's not lifting either of the valves. So that's how I did the other engine, and that's how I'm going to do this one. Okay, let's get some other things taken care of. I found all my parts that I need. I found my camshaft plug. I found all my nuts and bolts for the case. I found the special nuts for the oil pump. I found the oil pump, the cover, the gaskets, the case glue. Something else I wanted to say. Oh, this stud had come out of the engine. So what I did is I took the nut off of it and threaded it down in there. Actually, I put another nut on it and tightened it up so I could tighten it up. Because if you just put the case together and then put the stud down there, who's to say that this bolt or nut won't walk down and you only got a couple threads there, and then it pulls it out and it strips your case. So all these little things have to be done prior to putting it together. I have my connecting rods out of the way. Again, I've double checked everything. Okay, my bearings, my timing, my seals, everything I can think of. Okay, and the whole idea here is you want to take your time and do a nice job because you don't want to open it up again. Okay, so here's what we're going to do is we're going to paint this side and the other case with the gasket seal, and we are going to paint our plug. And incidentally, the book shows the plug goes in this way with the reset in. That's what it shows, or that's what I can see. So that's the way I'm going to put it together, although I've turned them around many times. I'm going to check the other case half and make sure the bearings are correct in it, that they're oiled, that the cam journals are oiled, and then we're going to mate this up. Now when we put it together, we're going to put it together and slide it together, and then we're going to put the oil pump in while there is a slight gap in here, and that way you're not pounding and pushing and shoving and grinding trying to get that in there. Now we're not going to tighten the cap on it or anything, but we're going to get the pump in there, and then we'll tighten our main bearings and the bolts around it. So let's get painting and get after it. So I'm using this VersaChem prime seal, and I think you could probably use anything. I would not use silicone, and I would not use any kind of something that's going to build or you have to build or anything like that. Your case halves should be clean. I cleaned mine with brake clean. And you want to kind of avoid, you know, like bearing surfaces or something like that. So you can get it in there where it's gonna seal pretty good. And I think as long as your case isn't boogered up, it'll probably be okay. So essentially we're just going to paint it like that. You don't have to have massively thick coat on here. You don't really want it squeezing in here. Essentially this is an airtight case without any sealant. So this is going to take up most of that. We're going to be very sparing with this on our oil pump gaskets as well. So, okay, let me get this painted up and we'll be right back with you. Maybe I can balance those where they won't move. There you go. Oh, I got my hands in it. Shoot. Let's see here. There she is. Okay. Ooh. Don't bounce it. Don't breathe. See if I can pull that connecting rod up out of the way. There she is. Right there. And look down there and make sure all four of your lifters are still there. It's going to be important. Okay, let's put some nuts on there. Okay, I've got the smallest little bit of sealant on there. The drive gear goes up because it correlates with the cam. I got a little sealant on the back there, a little bit of that gasket compound. Okay, now that our oil pump is in, we can find the rest of our bolts and tighten that up. Have a look at your case halves and make sure there isn't any gaps, and then do a little snug on your bolts. It doesn't need to be a lot, just a little bit. Just tighten them up a little bit. Okay. Now, see if everything reciprocates easily. Okay? Yeah? What I wanted to look at these. Yeah, that's not going to get out of the center of the axis there. Let's see how far we are. Yeah, we've got a good 1/8 of an inch or 3/16 of an inch clearance on these nuts. That's what I was thinking of, is these bolts. And I think on my connecting rods, I'm just making sure that they're going to clear. So make sure everything reciprocates. Take her all the way around and make sure nothing hangs up. Okay? And if something hangs up, you gotta take it back apart again. don't put a starter on it and say it's going to break in, because it's not. It's going to break. Okay, so she turns really easy. And what we're going to do now is we'll torque these down to what the book says. And that's 25 pounds. I'm going on my center ones first and working outwards. Double check all torque. See if she moves. There she is. She moves pretty easy. It's that syrup that I'm using. And when you crank it back and forth, remember you're going to have a lot of end play because you don't have your shims in. See your end play? That's those helical cut gears walking. Okay, so you don't have your shims in yet to adjust your end play, but we'll do that. Okay, now we know it reciprocates all the way around. Come on. It's that assembly grease is just so thick. Plus my clearances are really tight, which is good. That's a good tight engine. Okay, now we're going to do the outside ones, and they're at 13 or 18. 18, I believe. So let's do those. Check your book, make sure. Make sure that each one of your nuts has a warpy washer. The through bolts have warpy washers on both sides. I'm going to start right here, work around it. 14 is what we're after. Okay, once you get those all tightened up, you can check it and make sure it spins all the way around. Okay, so she's good. Okay, this is going to be the end of part 2, and we'll continue. I've got just a lot to do, a lot of stuff around the house, and I can only spend so much time. I'd love to spend all the time, but you know, that being a husband and a you know, person taking care of the house and stuff, there's all kinds of things I got to do. So anyways, this is the end of part 2. Thanks for being with me and wrenching on this, and thanks for being in my garage. And if you have any comments on this, or know that I'm doing something wrong, chime in. Okay, see you guys later. Bye.